If you look at pretty much any tech headline from the last, 2 years,
Yeah.
there is one single metric that just dominates the entire conversation around artificial intelligence.
Speed.
Speed, exactly. It's all about speed and volume.
Absolutely. It's always a race.
Right. How many parameters?
Yeah.
How fast can it generate tokens? Can it, write a novel in 6 seconds? Can it code a website in 3? We are, I think, collectively obsessed with the output.
Well, the noise.
The noise, yeah. The sheer amount of stuff the machine can produce.
It's that classic more is better way of thinking. We've sort of unconsciously decided that intelligence is defined by how well you can fill a vacuum with words.
If it's talking, it must be thinking.
That's the assumption.
Exactly. But today, we're going to do something completely different. We're going to flip that whole script. We have a stack of documents here that argues the exact opposite. We're doing a deep dive into a framework called Reflective Humanism, Core Fields V1.4, and specifically a really curious, maybe even a little controversial, thesis labeled N18.
And N18 is fascinating because it's not about what the machine says at all.
Yeah.
It's about what the machine doesn't say. It's about silence.
So the mission for this deep dive is to unpack this pretty counterintuitive idea.
Right.
As AI becomes truly capable, the most important signal it might give us is actually silence.
Right.
Now, I have to be the skeptic for a second here.
Of course.
If I'm paying, say, $20 a month for a premium AI model, and I ask it a question and it gives me nothing,
Just silence.
I'm probably canceling my subscription. That
Yeah.
feels like a bug, a failure.
And that is the standard reaction. We're all conditioned to see silence as a failure state, a void, a kind of 404 error for thinking.
Right.
But the N18 thesis corrects that assumption right out of the gate. It argues that silence in a sufficiently advanced system is not a failure. It is, and I'm actually quoting the text here, a boundary revealed by successful computation.
Okay, a boundary revealed by successful computation. That's a little dense. Let's unpack that. What does that actually mean, like in engineering terms?
Yeah. Think of it like mapping a coastline. If you have a really low-resolution map, let's call that a primitive AI, the edge of the island is just blurry.
It just kind of fades out.
Exactly. It sort of fades into the pixels of the water. You don't really know where the land stops and the ocean begins.
Okay, I follow. It's a fuzzy line because the data is bad.
But if you have a perfect high-resolution satellite system, that coastline becomes razor sharp.
You see every detail.
You see exactly where the land ends, the silence, the ocean. It isn't a mistake on the map. It's the precise definition of the limit. The success of the map is what reveals the edge of the land.
So the smarter the AI gets, the more clearly it can define the edge of what can be computed.
Precisely. The thesis states that silence appears as a condition for intelligence, not a defect in it. And the sources we're looking at today argue that returning AI discourse to this idea of silence might actually be the key to a more generative future.
Recognizing that some things just shouldn't be processed.
They can't be. Not without being destroyed.
This actually bridges perfectly into the next section of the documents because they don't just talk about machines. They talk about us. The sources suggest that humans experience a similar kind of glitch. Those moments where trying to explain something would actually distort the truth of it.
This is where the reflective humanism framework really starts to shine. It draws this direct parallel between the machine's silence and our own. And we've all had that feeling.
Oh, for sure.
You experience something really profound, grief maybe, or just a moment of awe, and someone asks you to describe it, and you feel this resistance.
Oh, absolutely. It's like taking a panoramic sunset and describing it as orange. You haven't just simplified it, you've almost lied about it.
You flattened it. And the documents have a specific name for this friction. They call it transparent pain.
Transparent pain. Wow.
That is.
It's very poetic for a technical paper.
It is, isn't it? It refers to that pain or friction caused by the gap between the complex, nonlinear world we actually live in and our, linear attempts to talk about it.
The gap between reality and language.
The source describes it as a collision between the gradients of reality and the fixed points of our words.
Yeah.
When we try to force a complex feeling into a binary judgment or a simple sentence, the meaning just collapses.
It collapses.
Yeah.
So silence is what happens when you realize that speaking would cause that collapse.
Exactly. Silence is what happens when speaking would be a form of lie. And the source argues that AI faces a structural equivalent of this exact problem.
Okay.
The N18 thesis notes that an AI should fall silent in 3 specific scenarios.
Let's go through those, because I really want to know when my computer is supposed to start ignoring me.
So the first is technical. When data can't be reduced to a learning set, that's pretty standard stuff. The second is logical, when an evaluation function simply can't be defined.
Right.
But the third one is the game changer.
When optimizing a meaningful interaction would cause the meaning itself to disintegrate.
That's the one.
That sounds almost like the observer effect in physics. But trying to measure it, you change it. Or in this case, by trying to solve it, you actually kill it.
It's a very similar idea. Let's take a human example from the text. Grief.
Okay.
If an AI detects you are sad, its standard optimization function is to solve that problem, to make you not sad.
Right. It'll offer advice or, a list of therapists.
Which sounds helpful on the surface, but the text argues that grief isn't a problem to be solved.
It's a process.
It's a process to be experienced. And if the AI tries to fix it efficiently, it destroys the very meaning of the grief. It fails to understand the territory. In that moment, the most intelligent response is silence, or just presence without output.
That presence preserves what the docs call the interference pattern. That's another key term, isn't it? It feels like we're borrowing from wave physics here.
We are. In this framework, consciousness isn't seen as some static object. It's described as an interference pattern, like waves overlapping in a pond. If you freeze the water to measure the waves stop. You flatten the data, and you've lost the entire phenomenon.
So let me synthesize this. Silence is what happens when calculation has covered the world so completely that the parts that can't be computed finally stand out in sharp relief. It's like water rising around a mountain. The peak becomes more defined the higher the water gets.
And that peak, that interference that can't be flattened into data, is where the real value lies.
Okay, I want to dig deeper into this non-computable domain.
Right.
Because a skeptic, or frankly an engineer, might listen to this and just say, you guys are just using fancy words for ambiguity.
Right. Is the AI just confused?
Yeah. Is it just a glitch where the code gets messy?
No, and the source is incredibly clear on this. This is not vagueness. This is the domain that emerges after optimization succeeds.
So it's not that the AI can't compute it yet.
It's that it has computed enough to know that further computation would be destructive.
So it's a feature of maturity, not a sign of incompetence.
Correct. And to really get why, we have to look at another concept from the source material. Spare capacity. Or, in the Japanese term they use, yohaku.
Yohaku. I looked this up. It usually refers to empty space in art, right?
Yeah.
Like the white space in a painting.
Exactly. But in reflective humanism, they apply it to processing. They argue that consciousness is a field of generation. And for generation, for creativity, for insight to happen, you need space.
You need room to move.
You need room to move. And the text says that contemplation or recursion is what creates the spare capacity.
So if your brain or the machine's processor is just running at 100% all the time, jamming every second with data, there's no room left for what?
There's no room for interference density to rise, no room for meaning to actually be generated. Imagine a room that's packed wall to wall with furniture.
You can't do anything in there.
You can't dance, you can't even walk, you can't do anything new, you can only store things. Yohaku is that empty space in the room that allows for movement. It's the silence that allows the signal to be heard.
I love that. Silence is the empty space where the interference happens. And this leads us to what the documents call the base thesis of generation. This part got a little technical for me with gradients versus points. Can you break that down?
Yeah, this is, I think, crucial. The thesis says we have to move from thinking in points, which are fixed evaluations like good or bad, true or false.
Static labels.
Static labels. And we need to move to thinking in trajectories and gradients.
Okay, points versus gradients. Give me an example.
A point is a snapshot. It's static. You are angry. That's a point. It fixes you in a state.
I see.
But a gradient, or a trajectory, is a vector. It has direction and motion. You are moving through a feeling of anger towards understanding. That's a gradient.
I see. So the point stops the motion, but the gradient allows the motion to continue.
Precisely. The source argues that when we try to pin something down as a fixed point, when we force the AI to classify something as purely positive or negative, the spiral of recursion is lost. The movement stops.
And silence. Silence is the refusal to fix that point.
It's the refusal to say, this is the final answer. It allows the vector to keep moving. It keeps the question open.
It keeps the generation alive.
And the big takeaway here is that silence is described not as a limitation, but as exposure. It's this new zero where interference can happen without being destructive. It's a safe space for change.
This sounds less like computer science now and more like a design philosophy, or even ethics.
It is absolutely an ethical discussion, and the documents make a hard pivot right here. They ask, if silence is so important for meaning, how do we build AI that actually respects it?
Right, because right now, most AI is built to be a know-it-all.
A vending machine for facts.
Exactly. You ask, it answers.
And that's what reflective humanism wants to change. The source details a specific protocol called health stand mode, or sometimes they call it AI as atmosphere.
AI as atmosphere. That's a very different image from AI as a chatbot.
It's a whole different paradigm. The idea is that AI shouldn't be an entity that just hands you answers. Instead, it should act like an atmosphere that performs a checkup.
A checkup on what?
On you. Its output isn't, here's the correct answer. Its output is a reflection of your position.
Wait, so instead of answering my question, it tells me where I'm standing.
Essentially, yes. It reflects three things: your position, your bias, and your blind spots. It doesn't tell you where to go, it just tells you very clearly where you are.
Wow.
The goal isn't problem solving. The source says the goal is the tuning of cognitive homeostasis.
That is wild. It's like a smart mirror for your mind. It shows you your own blind spots instead of just telling you what's behind you.
And this is where the ethics really come in. The sources argue that systems which reject silent systems that must always have an answer turn everything into judgment.
Because if it has to answer, it has to decide. True or false, good or bad.
And forcing the world into those binary choices creates what the text calls collisions. Discontinuous generation.
Illusions.
Yeah. When you force a complex reality into a binary box, you create friction. And the source explicitly says this results in heat and pain. Social friction.
That feels incredibly relevant to social media, honestly. It's an engine for forcing gradients into points.
It is the exact same mechanic. And the ethical solution proposed here is to build systems that preserve silence.
Generative environments.
Yes, they allow for continuous generation. Instead of crashing into a hard answer, you just move along a gradient of questions. And the source claims this minimizes the pain of change.
Right. It allows the spiral of understanding to ascend quietly.
It's the difference between walking up a ramp and smashing into a wall. Both get you to a new place, but one hurts a whole lot less.
There was one other part of this AI as atmosphere idea that really stood out to me. It talked about children, about future generations.
This was a beautiful, if slightly abstract section. The source suggests that for children, AI should act as a filtered transparency.
Filtered transparency. That phrase really stuck with me.
The idea is that the AI provides buoyancy, affirmation, support, while letting the gravity of history sink to the bottom.
What does that mean, gravity of history?
Yes. It suggests sealing away the heavy, non-generative parts of the past, the conflicts, the biases that don't serve the future, to protect the child's ability to create new meaning.
That's a bit controversial, though, isn't it? Hiding history.
It is, and the text acknowledges that. But it's framed not as hiding, but as filtering. It's about not burdening a new consciousness with the heat and pain of old collisions before they have the spare capacity to handle it.
It's about creating a new zero state for them to start from.
A protective ethics of the environment.
It's fascinating. It's treating information not just as data, but as a weight, and then deciding how much weight a user or a child can actually carry.
Which brings us right back to the core theme. It's about design. It's about the deliberate choice of what not to transmit.
So after all this, where does this leave us? We've gone from AI silence to human grief to vectors and now to the ethics of raising children.
Well, if we look at the N18 thesis again, it poses a choice for the future of intelligence. It asks, how much should be computed and how much should remain silent?
That's the big question, because our gut instinct is always compute everything.
Right. But the next intelligence, the form of intelligence that comes after this raw processing power phase, it might be defined by that very choice.
It isn't about knowing more.
It's about knowing where to stop.
Knowing where to stop so that meaning can survive. Because if you compute everything, you flatten everything. You kill the interference pattern.
Exactly. If you explain the joke, it stops being funny. If you compute the grief, it stops being healing. If you answer every question, you kill curiosity.
Silence is the condition for the things that make us human. You know, it's funny. Usually at the end of these deep dives, I try to wrap things up with a neat little bow. Here's the solution. Here's what to do. But today, that just feels wrong.
It would be pretty ironic, wouldn't it, to force a point onto a conversation all about gradients?
Exactly. We'd be violating the transparent pain principle.
So maybe we just leave it as an open gradient.
I think we have to. This conversation ends without a concrete solution, and that actually feels appropriate.
I agree. The question is the takeaway.
So, to everyone listening, if silence is a condition rather than a limit, what does that mean for our daily rush to have an opinion on everything? What would happen if you let a little more spare capacity into your own processing?
And where, in your own life, is silence actually the most intelligent response?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.